Good evening. This is Mary Gannon Kaufman from the third reflection for week 2 of Women at Prayer, looking at spiritual motherhood of priests and deacons. Now we've talked about the feminine genius. What is the gift of women that John Paul II and St. Edith Stein have talked about? Edith Stein said that since the fall in all women there is an embryo of this life-giving femininity, but it needs particular cultivation, and if it's not, so it's not to be suffocated amongst the weeds. She leads us to see how we can grow as human persons and be spiritual beings. She said, the human soul is not a complete, static, unchanging existence, but like a seed, it grows and ripens. It is in the state of becoming, with a driving power to develop in a particular direction. To this, the soul must bring to fruition those predispositions with which it has been endowed, which happens only by activating her spiritual powers and ordering them in grace. So that's our task. We're going to look at how do we activate our spiritual powers. Now, as women, what happens sometimes? We've talked about having this beautiful gift, but since the fall, sometimes we don't live it fully. Think about your own experiences. We have this capacity to walk alongside each other, to be receptive to one another, to want to lose ourselves in a good cause. Our call is to lose ourselves only in God. But as I said before, sometimes some of our deepest wounds have come at the hands of other women. We can be backbiting. We can be jealous of others' successes. We can sometimes lose ourselves in people that we're trying to serve. Think about a mom maybe that, is really gung-ho for her kid's development, and really she's getting some secondary kickback from him being successful. It helps her feel like a better person. Now we want to learn how to love without strings attached. So ask yourself, how pure are your motives in helping other people and walking alongside them? Are you motivated just as much to pray for somebody that really irritates you? Or do you pray for those that help you feel more important? That's important for us. Sometimes spiritual moms pick up this task because they feel more important praying for the clergy. The Lord is asking us to lose ourselves in Him, to follow His will, and that it's not about building our own ego. But there's really a tension. There's a loneliness that comes when we try to grow and center ourselves in God alone. We have to learn how to love others with the heart of God. So part of our task is to develop the capacity to be inwardly flexible and able to contain our own needs so we can address the needs of other people. That means to be virtuous, we have to be able to recognize our gift, recognize our needs, but to be able to move off center so that others' needs can be addressed. Sometimes this means that we have to learn how to find a peace in our own vulnerabilities. What happens? Let me tell you a story of a situation I saw while I was writing my book. I was sitting along the poolside one day, and I heard this young mom talking to her husband. They were both looking at their 3-year-old son who was in the swimming class in front of me. And the woman said, "Look at him. He is just not paying attention. I am just so frustrated. He didn't listen to me the whole time on the way over here." The husband didn't say anything, and the wife kept getting more upset, kind of speaking about it in a negative way towards her kid. Finally, the husband of the woman said, "Have you noticed him and compared him to anybody else in that class?" It was a class of 3-year-olds. "He doesn't seem any different to me." She stopped for a second, and she went, "Humph!" and she stormed off. Now, I only saw a little snapshot, but this illustrates a central premise of how we can develop as women. We want to stir our ability to feel and to appreciate beauty and to feel kind of a heartfelt compassion, feel our feelings. So in one sense, we want to stir those feelings, expose ourselves to beauty, expose ourselves to intimacy with other people, to their goodness. But we also want to be able to handle our emotions with an objective perspective. This woman had kind of gotten lost in her frustration with her 3-year-old. And what her husband brought was an objective assessment, an objective perspective. And so, have you ever noticed when everything is in chaos around you, how good it feels to go do something, physical, like clean your house, for instance, or order your desk at work or whatever? So, the reason that is that we need to bring an inner balance and order to our feeling reactions. That sometimes we can lose ourselves in those, and we can't love as effectively. So that's the gift of men in our lives. They draw us to holiness by helping us stay in touch with objective reality. If you notice in the book, as we go along, you'll read about Elizabeth Lesueur. She was a French laywoman. She died in 1914 from breast cancer at the age of 47. And she was married to an atheist man who all their friends were atheists. So Elizabeth would offer the suffering of encountering her atheistic husband for his conversion. But she had a beautiful sense. She had a lot of physical illnesses, which oftentimes when you have physical pain or emotional pain, it can be really captivating and take a lot of your attention away from being loving towards people if we don't learn how to work with it. What she did is she would do some objective spiritual reading every day to train her mind to think about deep and beautiful thoughts. And that helped pull her out of an undue focus on her emotional reactions. We want to learn how to have feelings and how to recognize them so they can propel us. They're just an energy to draw us towards something that needs attention or something good. But we can lose ourselves in them and lose our objective perspective. So she did objective work and some objective study to help develop her intellect to be able to help contain her feelings. Ultimately, we want to be people that the Spirit can guide us. We're free inside to be guided by the Holy Spirit in fullness. So Elizabeth Lesueur wrote, I will destroy egotism in myself, all touchiness and pride, and I will try to be gentle and humble towards even those people who cause me pain and affliction. So she said sometimes she was melancholy and she got stuck in her own emotional reactions, so she couldn't love. I like to compare her to like an experienced show horse. We want to be women like experienced show horses. We know how to move in beautiful ways, but we can be disciplined using the bit, which is our intellect and our ability to choose right action, to guide us so we don't run amok and willy-nilly in our feelings. They're just an energy, as I said, to help guide us to where we need to be and to loving other people. So let's see. I think I kind of told you this. What are some cultural influences that can make cultivating a feminine genius difficult? Edith Stein helps us know that there are certain conditions in every era that we have to be aware of. We live in an era that oftentimes denigrates motherhood. That, have you ever noticed that it's hard to speak up in a group of working people if you're a stay-at-home mom and say, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom? You feel like a second-class citizen sometimes. That oftentimes our culture has denigrated motherhood as an imposition on women, as opposed to a context that helps us develop our richness and fullness. So I hope that we can be countercultural women in a sense that we can appreciate our feminine gift, appreciate the power of our motherhood, because it is a gift for the church. So let me give you an example before we finish of a woman that really has touched my heart with her feminine genius. These are the words of Blessed John Paul II. We'll close with these, that even in the darkest periods of history, the woman's genius is present as a leavening agent of all human progress. These pictures are Louise Summerhill. She was the founder of International Birthright. It started in Toronto, Canada. Now, the story of Louise is this. She lived in Canada at about the time that abortion was being legalized, and she wanted to do something different. She wanted to make an impact, tried to make a difference. So she noticed that the pro-abortion people used a tactic that was very effective. They would befriend these young women at the vulnerable place in their life, being pregnant, maybe unmarried, and they would mentor her, befriend her towards the decision of an abortion. She said, why can't we use that same perspective towards mentoring them towards life? So she started Birthright International. Actually, I'm the president of the board of directors for Birthright International in my city. But so Louise started off. She had this idea brewing in her heart, but she doubted it. Many times we doubt these deep inspirations of the Holy Spirit. One day she had an experience of an unplanned pregnancy herself. She was a woman with 4 kids. At age 45, she started to feel nauseated. She went to the doctor. She was pregnant with twins. So the Lord gave her a perspective of an unplanned pregnancy. She struggled some in this pregnancy, but then she welcomed her daughters with open arms. But one day these twins, they were twins, they got in a little bike accident. They weren't hurt seriously, but she took them to the doctor. And on her way back, she was walking back to the car. She was kind of looking in the window of this little office building when a man came up to her and tapped her on the shoulder, and he said, well, what are you looking at this for? And she said, I've got an idea for a ministry to help pregnant young women. And he said, oh, tell me about it. So she went on and gave him more details. He said, are you a Christian? Do you believe in Jesus? She said, well, I'm a Catholic. Yes, I believe in Jesus. He said, you can have this for the first year free of charge. So she organized this, and it's still going. 1 million babies later have been saved through this ministry of Birthright International. One ordinary woman being receptive to the problems of the world and saying yes to the inspirations of God. That's our mission, to be fully alive as women so that we can fully live the vocation the Lord has given us. If it's spiritual motherhood, spiritual support of others, let us develop a strong feminine capacity to love, even when we have to love and pray for those that aren't so easy to love. That will bring us to our fullness. So I look forward to seeing and talking with you as we meet for our second interactive session on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday from 12 to 12:30. So thank you very much. Once again, pray with the readings on the website and pray with the images in this PowerPoint. Pray with the words we've spoken. Share with other women too. So God bless you, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. Good night.